Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on the appropriations, the supplementary estimates bill. This, and I'll come to the previous member's speech in a moment, but this budget and the supplementary estimates represent a budget in search of a purpose. If this, Mr Speaker, if this budget and these supplementary estimates were an essay, I'd probably give it a C-. I'd give it a C- because it fills out the form, it follows the form, it's written by somebody who knows how to write an essay, but it is completely lacking in coherence, in direction, in plan, in any kind of insight or foresight. It certainly lacks flair. It is pedestrian at best, and it is damning for the nation at worst, Mr Speaker. This is not an adequate budget. This is the government's second budget, and it is lacking in any proactive responses to the economic crisis. And that group of people opposite know that this is not a budget that is going to repair anything that is striking at the heart of New Zealand's growth and prosperity. It lacks any proactive response to the economic crisis, to the global recession and to unemployment in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, there are problems with a society that drifts further and further apart internally, where inequality is exacerbated and not addressed, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, where those gaps increase and are not closed. There are problems of social dissonance that begin to match the problems of economic difference. And that's well catalogued by people cleverer than me. And that is something that this government seems not to have taken into account at any stage in the development and the drafting of this budget. Under this budget, the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. And in a few years, it will be entirely obvious that the roots of the social dissonance that will be created by that increasing gap between the rich and poor should be sheeted home to this budget. Instead, Mr Speaker, the panacea offered in these appropriations is the same mantra that the National Party has been offering forever. Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. And that's in this term, followed by asset sales next term, if they are given a chance to do that. And let's hope the 80% of people in New Zealand who are clearly opposed to the sale of state assets will remember when it comes to the ballot box next year that this government will sell state assets as quickly as it possibly can. And so they've only got two prongs, Mr Speaker, to their economic development program in this budget. One is tax cuts and the other is not now because, you know, beg your pardon, Mr Speaker, not now because the public aren't quite ready for it, but we'll soften them up to asset sales. So we'll do tax cuts now and asset sales later. But these tax cuts, Mr Speaker, are a swindle. They are a swindle. Inflation of nearly 6%, 5.9% that the Treasury has predicted, will gobble up any dollars that people on low and middle incomes will receive from tax cuts. The tax cuts are also unfair, Mr Speaker. 1/3 of the tax cuts go to the top 5% of earners. And in fact, 15% goes to 1% of the top earners. These are grossly distortionary And this represents impoverished and old-fashioned and backward thinking that says that if you give the rich more, it will trickle down eventually and reach those who are less well off. Well, that has never worked. Since it was first posited in the 1970s, that has never worked as a way of maintaining social services, a way of improving opportunity, a way of closing gaps between the haves and have-nots, and it will not work this time either, Mr. Speaker. Those on the average income will get something in the order of $15 net of GST a week. John Key gets $218 net of GST a week after these tax cuts. People on the minimum wage will get something in the order of $3. And with that, they have to accommodate and absorb power price increases, increases in ACC levies, increases in the supermarket trolley cost because of the increase in GST, and there is no bright prospect, as the National Party's hoardings up and down the country in 2008 promised, there is no bright prospect for the future for most families. If I just look at the area where I live in Nelson, 76% of the people there, Mr. Speaker, earn less or have an income of less than $40,000. 76%, that's 3/4 of the people in Nelson who have an income of one kind or another earn less or have an income of less than $40,000. The thing that really disturbs me even more than the impoverished and old-fashioned and antiquated and outmoded and much maligned orthodoxy that lies behind this budget is the lack of a plan. The lack of a plan for growth. This budget represents a series of lost opportunities. I've said it's old thinking. There's no imagination. There are no ideas, in fact, about how to move the economy forward. Not just a step change, that the Prime Minister keeps talking about, because a step change isn't adequate. There is a quantum leap required in the approach to our primary production and the things that we do so well. And yet, on the commodities market, we remain entirely vulnerable to the exchange rate. We remain vulnerable to low margins on commodity prices going out into international markets. And where is the investment in the skills training, in tertiary education that is required in order to get this economy becoming a smart economy? Of course, we're good at producing first-class, top-rate primary produce. I see that every day in the region where I live, in Nelson. But can I also say to the members opposite that what I've seen in Nelson recently are job cuts in fisheries, job cuts in forestry, and most recently job cuts in engineering. Now those, Mr. Speaker, are job cuts that are real. They're about real families losing jobs. We have the situation in Nelson where people are now, where both partners, both earners in a family, are out of a job for the first time in their lives. Where is the imagination? Where is the new policy? Where is the quantum leap in this budget that is going to get us back into gear? One of the previous speakers talked about the fact that a lot of our businesses are small businesses, and that's true, but she neglected to identify the impact of the increase in GST on small businesses. And she ought to get around more and talk to small business owners about how they're feeling about the increase in GST and how the pressure is on them to absorb it. Mr. Speaker, there are no new ideas in this budget. It is impoverished thinking, it is not adequate for the times, and it will not move us one jot towards the kind of smart economy we require. Thank you, Mr.